you for that introduction, Rabbi Wolf. Those of us who attend the synagogue on Shabbos, Yom Tov, know that the 5 books of Moses, the foundation of our faith, is divided up into certain sections and read over a period of 12 months so that it is begun and finished within a period of 12 months. There was a time when outside authorities would not allow us to read our Torah, whatever nonsensical reason it may be. And so there was a time when the rabbis, as a substitute, instituted a certain chapter from the rest of the Bible to be read as a substitute for the Sedra. Those rabbis, in their wisdom, chose a kapitel from Tanakh, usually which depicted what they at the time felt was the essence of the message of the particular Sedra that was supposed to have been read and was banned from being read. I said what they thought at that particular time, but as we believe that the institutions of our Chachamim, their takonos, are eternal, therefore, even today, when we are Baruch Hashem permitted to read the Torah, the Haftorah was still retained, and the Haftorah still can and does reflect the essence of what the Chachamim wanted us to learn from a particular Sedra. There were special occasions, Shabbosim in the week, where it was not what was written in the Sedra that we read that was used to reflect what we read in the Haftorah, but more so the time in which the Sedra was read. That was reflected in the Haftorah. We have 7 weeks from the day of Tisha B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of the temple, till Rosh Hashanah, where we read on Shabbat, not necessarily a Haftorah which reflects the Sedra of the week, but which reflects the time in which it is read. It is called, the 7 Shabbosim are called Shivot Nechemta, the 7 Sabbaths of comfort, of encouragement. And the Chachamim instituted that on every Shabbos, during those 7 weeks, a portion of the Haftorah that is read should reflect the yearning, the hope of what Tisha B'Av brings into the minds and hearts of Jewry, and thereby, in the words of the prophet which are eternal, find the comfort for the sadness which Tisha B'Av brought into the synagogue. There is nothing that is accidental. Everything is b'hashgacha pratis. I don't think it was worked out that this Saturday night a manifestation evening for Moshiach should be held particularly on this Saturday night because of the particular Haftorah. But from heaven, it was so guided that this evening should be held on this Saturday night, where Isaiah the prophet comes into the shuls and the synagogues and Batim Midrashim of Klal Yisrael. His eternal words are uttered, which I will only recite a few sentences at the beginning and at the end, and even even those who went to shul this morning. Doesn't matter if they hear it again. I'm sure they were talking to during the Haftarah. Isaiah the prophet says, it's chapter 60. Kumi oiri ki vo oirich. Arise out of the night of despair and depression and shine forth, for thy light is come. Uchvoid Hashem olayich zoroch, and the glory of God is risen upon thee. Hinei hachoshech yechach eretz va'arof elohimim, for behold, darkness covers the earth, and gross darkness the people. But ve'olayich, upon thee, Yizrach Hashem, the Lord will shine forth. Uchvoidoi olayich yiroeh, and his glory shall be seen upon you. V'holchu goyim lo'erich, and nations shall walk by thy light. Umlochim lenoiga zacher, and kings at the brightness of thy rising. Si'i sovivenayich, lift up thine eyes round about. Urei, and have a good look. Kulon nigbetzu vo'uloch, they are all gathered together and coming to you. Bonayich merochek yovoyu, your sons are coming from afar. Uvnoisayich al tzad teomano, and your daughters are being brought up on the side of your people. Os tiri v'noharto, when you see this, you will be radiant. Ufochad v'rovchav levovei, your heart will throb with excitement and be enlarged. And the prophet finishes off by saying, Lo yishoma oitchom es be'artzech, there will no more be seen violence in your land. Shoid v'shever b'gvuloyech, desolation or destruction within thy borders. Lo yiyah lochid hashemesh lo'ir yomam, not the sun will enlighten your day. U'noiga hayoreach lo'yoyer loch, nor the moon shall be the brightness by which you shall walk. V'oyer loch Hashem lo'ir olam, God will be your everlasting light. Lo yovoi oichim sheikh, your sun shall no more go down. Virechech lo Yosef, neither shall thy moon withdraw itself. Ki Hashem yieloch lo'ir olam, for God shall be your everlasting light. V'sholmu yemei evlech, and the days of thy suffering and mourning shall be ended. V'yamech kulam tzadikim, your people will all be righteous. Le'olam yirshu aretz, they will inherit the land forever. Neitzer matoyai, they are the branch of my planting. My seyodal hispoer, the work of my hands in whom I glory. Hakotoim yiyelo elef, those small ones will become into thousands. V'hatzoyer, and the least among the nation, the goyotzum, to a mighty people. Ani Hashem, I God, Be'ito hachisheno, will hasten it in its time. And now, sages, when looking at this last sentence of Isaiah, Be'ito hachisheno, will hasten it in its time, ask, this is a paradox. If it's time, then it's not hastened. If it's hastened, then it's not the time. And Rashi brings it, and Chachamim say it. There are two periods when this will come about. Zochu, if they will merit it, Achisheno, I will hasten that time. Lo yizochu, if they will not merit it, Be'itoy. It will happen in its due time. I'd just like to start off with a little prologue. What is the subject of tonight's topic? We are talking, of course, every commandment in the Torah is important. And there is no one that can say that one is more important than the other. To the believer, to one who believes that this is the will of God, every word that is written there is holy and important, and I can't weigh one against the other. And yet, despite that fact, I have no hesitation in saying that the topic of tonight is the most important thing, the most important event, the most important mitzvah, the most important deed which the Almighty has to perform for the sake of Jewry and for the sake of the world that he has created. We are talking about Moshiach, a messianic era, which was the yearning, the hope, the silent prayer of every Jewish generation that existed. It is even the silent hope of every human being. It is the silent hope of every child. Ich war keinem gedacht. I lost my mechutten a year ago. And when I heard the news, I was upset and started crying. And my little grandchild of 6 years comes over to me and says, Zayda, don't be sad. Before you die, Moshiach will come and you'll live forever. It is a topic which I have no hesitation in saying that was the purpose of creation. That was the purpose of Yeridas HaNeshama Lamato. That was the purpose why we have been suffering and why we have been performing mitzvahs in order to bring about this era which we call Yemos HaMoshiach. When one speaks about a topic such as this, which is the ultimate of everything we believe in and everything we strive for, you've got to understand with what awe and trepidation I tackled to speak on such a topic. I am not here to score any points. I'm not here even to influence everyone that is here. I am here and accepted to come on this topic to speak this evening because greater people than myself have in their wisdom told me that the mere fact that Jews come together and make the coming of Moshiach a topic of discussion, that in itself brings Moshiach an inch closer to revelation. And because I yearn for Moshiach, that's why I've come here to speak to you, not to impress you, but to speak in such a way that our gathering should have that effect which G'dolei Yisrael say is the purpose of such a gathering. If that be the case, that this is the yearning of generations, and even more so, if you look in the Jewish encyclopedia on the subject of Messiah or Messianism, you will see there that they bring there, and in a sense they are right, there is no explicit commandment in the Torah explicitly written about Moshiach. It is true that the Rambam refers to two places, Parshas Bilom and to the coming Seder Atem Nitzovim, that there we have the instruction about the coming of the Moshiach, but it's hidden and veiled. It's not explicit like other commandments. It's not written, beferish in the Torah, I am going to send you a man one of these days who's going to deliver you, and you must believe in him, and this is what's going to happen, and this is what's going to be, and therefore believe in it the same as you believe in me. Not written explicitly like that. Bali Kabbalah say that the reason is because there are always events, a few of them at any rate, events and happenings which are beyond the articulation in human language, even in the language, the holy language of the Torah. The advent of Moshiach is such an event that whatever anybody has said about it, it is that and more. It is beyond being able to describe it and put it down in the words of the Torah. And because of that, it is written in veiled allegory because of the greatness of its mysticism, the greatness of its event. And if that be the case, I would like to know why. Why is it that when you go out into the world today, and it's not only now when I'm a rabbi of 70 years, when I was a boy, and I used to speak to people in my shul, from Eden, and I used to say to them as a boy, mention Moshiach. A joke, a gelächter. Why is it that when the subject is brought up, you sometimes get a sarcastic retort? Don't believe. People, atheists don't believe in Hashem, Rahman al-Islam, for the moment. Why is it that even in the Talmud itself, when sometimes a topic arose to discuss something after Moshiach's advent, it is straight away dismissed. Hilchas Moshiach. It's not relevant to us. It's something that's far off. Later on, that's not a topic for us to discuss at the moment. Hilchas Moshiach is not a subject for us to discuss one with the other. Maimonides says that the prophets are full about the subject of Moshiach. It doesn't say they write about it, it is full. The whole thrust of the prophets was to bring to our notice the coming of the Messianic era. The Talmud, a Masechta Sanhedrin, a Masechta Sota, pages full of it, that describes the scene prior, after, during. Why is it that, to the best of my knowledge, throughout the ages, modern times, it has never been a topic of study or a topic of discussion? I went to a yeshiva and I learned everything. Never learned about Moshiach. Never taught. Tried to look around and find books on it. There's very little written about it. Why was it that there was a euphoria about Moshiach in the time of the prophets? And then afterwards, down it went. It may be that people spoke about it quietly. Rabbonim, whenever they held a drosha, always finished up their droshas. Uvolet Zion Goel, and the Redeemer should come to Zion. It's as if They had a duty to perform, to mention it. But it had nothing to do, it was never a topic amongst Jews. And I think the reason mainly is, even though I'll give you a number of reasons, the reason mainly is because it was known to the early prophets as well as the early Tanoim and Amiroim that the coming of the Moshiach, even though they believed, as the Rambam says, though he tarry, I will wait every day for his coming. Yet deep down in their hearts they knew that it needed something special in the early chapters of our history for the Messianic era to arise. Under normal circumstances, they realized that it would take quite a while before the Messianic era arose. There is, in the Gemara Sanhedrin tells us, that we are not allowed to work out dates as to when the Moshiach comes. Terrible expression for those who do it. A Gemara. Yet, so many rabbis, Rashi, Balei HaTosfos, Malden, so many rabbis, so many commentators, great men, who wrote down dates when, according to them, Moshiach should come, in contradiction to the Gemara. And the Ramban says that this edict was given only for 1,000 years. Why 1,000 years? Because in his assessment, even though he himself gave a date, his assessment was that it was sometimes further on in history that this is going to come about. And even though there were occasions when great men decided it was a Messianic era, Rabbi Akiva appointed Bar Kokhba as Moshiach, that was because in his assessment that the rabbis agreed with him in his time, because it was a great occasion. Bar Kokhba had won the fight against the Roman Empire, brought freedom to the Jews, and therefore because of this special occasion, he thought that maybe Moshiach had come. And so therefore because of this, during a certain period, though the Nevi'im gave us the promise that it was going to happen, many Rabbonim and many authorities knew and felt that it was not good for the Jewish people to be too euphoric and enthusiastic about his coming tomorrow, because the odds are that it's some further off time. And if you work up people into a hope and belief, and then they're disappointed, an expression in Hebrew, that something which you hope for continuously all the time, and it doesn't come about, it weakens your heart. And you not only feel disappointed, you feel anger and you feel bitterness. Another reason may be, you know how much the Christian church has removed from our holy writings any references to Moshiach. We have no idea what is missing from our writings that they have taken away, either destroyed or hidden away. You know what it was 500 years ago to mention the Messiah? According to them, he'd already come. And for Jews then to openly go out under the conditions in which they lived in those days and speak about the Messiah, that was heresy, insulting to the Christian religion. Therefore, if it was spoken quietly within the ghettos, one to the other. We're hoping Moshiach comes. But openly, we didn't have the courage to discuss it and make it topics. Because under the jurisdictions in which we lived, it was a dangerous topic for Jews to tackle. The third reason is that the few times, and it happened more than just twice, it happened 6 or 8 times, a few times when the Jewish people became euphoric about a Moshiach, and it turned out to be a false Messiah. It cost us a lot. Jews suffered for it. And because of this tragic aftermath of these events, the rabbis felt, the authorities felt, it's better to keep quiet and silent about it, to believe that the Messiah is going to come, but to make a topic out of it, and to then point to someone that he's the Messiah. And then, God forbid, if it turns out to be false, the damage that may be caused is too tragic for them to tolerate it. If that be the truth, then ma nishtano halaylo hazeh mikol halaylos. Why is it different now than before? Why is it that my father, when I was a little boy, used to sit down at 12 o'clock at night? I used to see him in a room in London, in front of a door at night, and sit down and weep. And when I used to ask him, Daddy, what are you weeping? What are you crying about? He said, I'm crying for the Churban Beis Hamikdash. I said, why are you crying? What's there to cry about? When you get older, you'll understand. Wouldn't discuss. Didn't tell me about Moshiach. Didn't have enough time. He died too much when I was young. Why is it that I did not learn about Moshiach? And suddenly, over the last few years, I've become so engrossed, so taken in, not I myself, others too, with a topic and subject of Moshiach, which was, in a sense, so quietly kept within the hearts and the precincts of Jewish homes and Jewish hearts. Greater men than myself, G'dolei Yisrael who live today, are telling us that within the vast array of descriptions that is written in the Talmud and other Sforim about the Ikvus of the Mashiach, the time prior to the advent of the Messiah. And there have always been certain signs which certain people picked up and said, oh, this is a sign Moshiach is coming. Either a very tragic incident within Jewry or the world, or something very great that had happened, something very good. But we said, Moshiach must be coming. But they tell us, those who have studied it and have a greater knowledge than we have, tell us that never in the history of the Jewish people has there been fulfilled so much the signs that are mentioned by our authorities that usher in the era of Moshiach. All those that are written in the Gemara and the Talmud, of all those, I mean, these are people who know his Jewish history. These are people who have studied more than I have all the sayings, all the literature that is written about the Moshiach and his advent and what is going to happen before him. And they explicitly tell us that there has never been an era in our history, like it has been now, that so many of the signs are being fulfilled, and that therefore this should be a sign that it is on the eve of the revelation of Moshiach. I add a personal one. I haven't got the audacity to stand here and see elderly people here who have numbers on their hands or haven't got numbers on their hands who have suffered in the Holocaust. I haven't got the audacity to say for even one moment that I have suffered more, or that I feel more, or that I understand more about the Holocaust. Can't be. But I must tell you the truth how I feel. I am one of these persons that are obsessed about the Holocaust. It's not only because I feel for those people. It's not only because I have a very good heart and I'm sorry for them. The Holocaust is a revolutionary event in the history of Jewry and in the history of the world. And I personally am not prepared to die and accept the fact that the Holocaust is just another chapter of martyrdom in the history of the Jewish people. I cannot die in peace, not seeing that something must have grown out of that Holocaust, that it wasn't just another incident of cruelty and suffering of the Jewish people. True it is that we have been zeicher in our door, in our generation, to the land of Israel, which no other generation had the privilege in exile. With all due respect, with all my great thanks to the Almighty for it, all great respect to the state and the people of Israel. It is not enough. It is just not enough. There are other countries in the world, other peoples in the world who have fought and battled for their freedom. No people in this world has had to pay the price that the Jewish people have had to pay for the elementary right of a human being. Is that what I've lost 6 million people for? So that I can lie on the beach in Tel Aviv in peace when there are no terrorists and not be called a bloody Jew? Is that the sum total? Cannot accept it. And ever since the Holocaust, I have believed with every fiber in my being that I'm going to be zeicher to see something greater as a result of that tragedy. And nothing will satisfy me. And the Rabbi Shalom, here's what I'm saying. Nothing, Rabbi Shalom, will satisfy me except the advent of Moshiach Tzidkenu, the Messianic era, for which people suffer so much, for which people hope for so much. Where there is a hope that those who have been burnt, those that have been choked, will eventually rise again from the grave and enjoy the life which the civilized world did not allow them to. And so therefore, because of this, I have always believed deep down that after the Holocaust, something is going to happen. Something that is going to satisfy me and to satisfy Jewry. Something that is going to turn the world upside down. That is going to be the Messianic era. And the truth of the matter is that things are different today than what they were. I asked Simani Shtano, why is there a tingling in my spine? Why do I feel that something great is happening? Why have I got the audacity to come to an audience in 1991 and speak about some ancient belief. Moshiach is going to come. Why have I got the audacity to do that? Well, let me put it in this way. There is in Israel a newspaper called Davar. And in it, I read an article, not a religious writer, but not an anti-religious writer, a traditionalist. A person that you could see that in the 67 war, when we got the Kotel HaMaravi back, you could see from his writings that it took him. He felt thrilled. He felt it was a great moment in Jewish history. And some years later, after the Six-Day War, he wrote an article in the newspaper Davar, for which he is a correspondent. The heading of the article was, Eifo HaKotel Sheli. Where is my kotel? Where is my wall? And he describes there in his article how when he was younger and he was a child, and he used to remember the Kotel HaMaravi. There used to be a narrow lane with cobblestones. It was dark and it was dangerous to walk through. But when his father took him, and when you see old people with their talisim, with their beards going there, before they banned us, there was a certain awe and reverence and respect. The kotel, the kotel. Today he says, I go to the kotel, and what do I see? Thousands of tourists, some in shorts and some not in shorts, with their cameras, Americans with big cigars and everything. What's that, the kotel? That's not the kotel that I remember. Eifo HaKotel Sheli. He writes his article. The next day, he writes a follow-up article. And he writes and he says, because the remembrance for the 6-day war between Pesach and Shavuot. So he writes how he was sitting at the Seder. And, they were eating the moreh and the matzah. And then they took the moreh and the matzah and made a sandwich of it. And ate it. And they say the words, Ki Hillel. Kein Osa Hillel. Just the same as Hillel did in the Beis Hamikdash. When the time of the Beis Hamikdash stood, so they were doing it. Zeichel HaMikdash Ki Hillel. It's in memory of the Mikdash of Hillel, like Hillel. And his boy, a 7-year-old son of his, turns around to his father and says, Abba, tell me, why should we today mention about the Churban Beis Hamikdash? That's for Tisha B'Av, for Shiva Asa B'Tammuz. But today it's Chag HaPesach. We are celebrating Cherut. Why bring onto the Seder table the sadness of remembering the Beis Hamikdash, which is Chorev? He says, he got me on the spot, and I didn't know what to answer him. And then I said to him, during the meal, I said to him, my son, it's not written there, Zecher LeChurban. It's written there, Zecher LeMikdash. When you sit down Tisha B'Av and you weep, you are remembering the destruction of the temple. When you sit down at the Seder and do something to commemorate the temple, you are doing Zeicher LeMikdash, not its destruction, but Zeicher to the glory that it was when it stood. He says, when my father took me to the Kotel yesterday that I wrote about, it was Zeicher LeChurban. When we came to the Kotel, we remembered how the destruction of the temple, the exile of the Jewish people, it was dark, it was miserable. True, it was holy, it was sanctified. But it was night. It was a narrow cobbled street. It was dangerous to stay there. Now when we go to the Kotel, it's not Zeicher LeChurban. It's Zeicher LeMikdash. It reminds us of the glory of the temple that was and the glory of the temple that will be. It reminds us of a new era, a new development in Jewish life. Whereas before, all we thought about was the tragic past. Now we think of the glorious past, which we can turn into our glorious future. The kotel that I knew may not exist anymore, but there's a new kotel that fills me with new hope, with new aspiration. It is Zeichel Mikdash. You can't deny that however tragic how yesterday was, and it hasn't improved very much, true, they still hate us. There are plenty still who would have the opportunity to still beat us up, and even more, chas v'sholom. It hasn't decreased the anti-Semitism that exists in the world against the Jewish people. But there's one difference, a huge difference. And somebody who doesn't sense it is not living with Jewish history, is not feeling the thrill of what is happening today and tomorrow. It's Zeichel Mikdash. It's a new kotel. It's a new people. It's a new today that we are living in. We have arms. Never has the Jewish people been so strong. May God help us that we never have to use it. But what a difference it is to die being dragged into a gas chamber, or to die with a bix in your hand, with a gun in your hand. What would they have given our martyrs to be able to have died with a gun in their hands? It's a different time and a different era. And there is justification for feeling that we are living in a time when maybe Moshiach's time is coming. Because of what is described in the Talmud and in the Sfarim. Because we are told of what is happening, that this tallies with what is written, because of the new feeling that we have, the atmosphere that has been created, there has never been in Jewish history a moment that would more justify a people from saying Moshiach is coming, it's the Messianic era is coming. And I must tell you that the belief in the Moshiach, you don't need to wear a beard and have a long kaftan and be a rabbi. There's not one person here who doesn't believe in the Messianic era. There's not one person out there, whether he's a black man who is beating up Jews in Crown Heights, or whether he's an Arab and killing Jews, chas v'sholom. They all believe in Moshiach. They all believe in a Messianic era. It is ingrained in a human being to believe that tomorrow is going to be better than today. That when night comes, it's not going to be night all the time. The sun is going to rise. It is inherent in the being, in the genes of a human being, to believe that there is going to come a better time. And even though it might take time, but the very belief that tomorrow is going to be better, and if not tomorrow, next week, and if not next week, next month, if not next month, next year, the belief that things are going to be better, they must get better, makes it easier to carry the burdens of today and next week and next month and next year. And so therefore everybody believes deep down, and everybody wants the Messianic era. And I cannot understand why people should laugh at me. Why people should be sarcastic? To believe that the world is going to be a better place? I wouldn't be able to live. Would you be able to exist if this is going to go on like that? To this kind of world as it was, I'm going to bring children and grandchildren? If we didn't really believe deep down that one day things are going to get better. And they are getting better. They are getting better. What we have to do is give a little push. So we are told. Somebody said to me, Rabbi Wolf, when he walked in, there are others, and I've heard it, and I've discussed it with other rabbis, that say that's not the Jewish way. What right we got to tell the Almighty what to do. We have to believe the Moshiach will come, but we should leave it to him when he wants to. Okay. But I want to know something. If I feel pain, is anybody going to blame me if I cry out? It's only natural. I know it comes from the Almighty, and I accept it. I should accept it. Aber es tut weh, schreit man. And es tut weh. I don't want to wait anymore. I've had it up to here. How long do we have to suffer? How long do we have to wait for a better tomorrow next year? Why not a better tomorrow today? Now! And if I feel that way, to whom shall I shout? To Mr. Bush? Mr. Hawke? To my Father in heaven. He's my Father. Was hast du Teines in mir, Rebbe Yisrael? What do I want Mashiach for? The Rambam says, in his last few lines of his Mishnah Torah, says, you should know, Lo nesaver chachomim neviim v'chachomim. The sages and the prophets did not have a passion. Nisava. You know what nisava means? The root of the word nisava is ataiva. Ataiva means a passion, an unstilled desire. They had an unquenchable desire and passion for the coming of Moshiach. But they did not have it because they wanted to be masters of the world. They did not have that passion because they wanted to have a good time, eat and drink and enjoy the plenty that is going to be at that time. They had a passion for Moshiach because they will have full time to be able to study the greatness of the Lord, the Torah, etc., etc., etc. I believe it, that great men have great aspirations and great desires. But I'm a plain Jew. And I'm not ashamed to tell the Rebbeinu Shalom that I want Moshiach, plain and simple. I don't want Mr. Shloben Eden anymore. That's why I want Moshiach to come. I don't want Jews to be beaten up anymore. I don't want suffering anymore. I don't want people to mutschen sich with parnasse. I don't want people to suffer from sickness and illness. I want grandchildren to be able to enjoy for years and years the presence of their grandchildren, of their grandparents, and not to cry over the demise. I want Moshiach for simple reasons. Rosh Hashanah is coming. I used to say that Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchever used to advertise for somebody to blow shofar in his besmedrash. And candidates come. So one candidate came to him, said to him, tell me, what do you have in mind when you blow shofar for us Jews in besmedrash Rosh Hashanah? So he started telling him about all the mystical things that he learned in Kabbalah about Piyah Shofar, or that's what he has in mind. Very good. When kills in the second one, nicht gemeint, because he didn't delve in Kabbalah so much, he was a bit of a misnaged, a literature. What do you have in mind when you blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah? What I have in mind, he says, I studied through the halachas and the dinim. I have in mind that one note should not be longer than the other according to halacha, and this one should be 3 notes, and that one should be 9 notes, and the length of the tekiah, and so on and so forth. Chaim, very good. Then he comes in, another fellow comes in, pushes to read and says, excuse me, he said, you applied for blowing the shofar. What do you have in mind when you blow the shofar? Sagt der Rebbe, I have a wife that's not well. I have a daughter that needs a shidduch. My parnassa is not so good. And when I stand in your besmedrash and I'll blow the shofar, I'll think to myself, Rebbeinu Shalom, for the schus that we're blowing the shofar. Please grant me all these things. My wife should get well, my zlata should get a shidduch, and my parnosa should increase, etc., etc. You come to Rosh Hashanah and blow by me and shul. There are chachamim that have in mind great things. I have simple things. I want Moshiach to come. I want him to come now because I want to see the greatness of the glory of the people of Israel. I want to be fulfilled in my lifetime what Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Almighty, Lama yomru hagoyim hayenu Eloheihem. Why should the Goyish world say, where is the God of Israel? I want the truth to be revealed, that we have suffered for the sake of his name, for the sake of his Torah, and I want my reward. I want to tell you something. We have to be Zeicher. I read you the Haftorah. He'll come anyway. Time has been appointed, and he'll come whether we are worthy or whether we are not worthy, whether the world wants it or whether the world does not want it. Be'itoi, he will come in his time. But achisheno, if you want it hurried up, then you must have the merit, you must have a slus. And I want to testify here. I'm not the greatest rabbi in the world, but neither do I regard myself as the least rabbi in the world. And I have a right to testify on behalf of my people in front of the Rabbi Shalom. That the Navi finished with the words, V'ameich kulon tzadikim. Do you know what Chachamim tell us? That when it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, V'hoyish Moshe, and the man Moses, Onav me'oid mikol ha'odom asher pnei ha'adama, was the most humble man of any man on the face of the earth. So they tell us in the Midrash that he was looking at the time of the generation that was going through Chevlei Moshiach. He was looking at our generation, and he felt so humble, and he felt such a sense of humility when looking at the Jewish people in this time and in this generation. Today, after the Holocaust, it's not to look at the Jew and be surprised that he has thrown away Torah mitzvahs, God forbid. Today, it's a wonder, and it's the greatest Kiddush Hashem when you see a Jew today who still believes in the Almighty. When you see a Jew today who still puts on tefillin. When you see a Jew today who leaves his television set and comes into a hall to hear about Moshiach. After all we've gone through, when Jews still stick to their roots and still stick to the Almighty, then ve'ameich kulon tzadikim le'olam irshu oretz. Then indeed the Jewish people have reached that stage and that level that are worthy that Moshiach should be revealed to them. And if there's still a little bit of averis, not which you have, but which I have, and that maybe retards the coming of Moshiach. So a great Rabbi cried out in his Beis HaMedrash the words of David HaMelech, that the Almighty, according to David HaMelech, who is the psalmist of Israel, said, Dei es Yisrael mikol tzoroisov. You redeem the Jewish people from all their tzores. And then afterwards, Vehu yivdeh es Yisrael mikol avonosov. Then afterwards, he will redeem the Jewish people from the few sins that are still left for them to carry around. Because of all these reasons, I have no hesitation in saying that we are on the verge of something very great very revolutionary that is going to happen. Let me tell you, that when you are told that it is not maybe halachically correct to demand Moshiach, because the wording is, I have to sit and wait, tell them that Arav in Israel said to look up in Chaim, in Beis Yosef on Hilches Biches Hamozon. That means one of our poskim, one of our great rabbis who lays down the halacha for us, in the laws relating to the benching, when he discusses the Baruch Uvnei Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, rebuild Jerusalem, the holy city. The Beis Yosef, who is our authority, says that it is our duty to be moide v'toivea and demand from the Eibashter that he sends us Ben David and rebuilds the temple. That's the Beis Yosef says it. Let them look it up. The Chofetz Chaim was not a Chosid, but he was a Poisik. There was no rabbi that can carry out his Rabbonos without having a Chofetz Chaim, Mishnah Brura in his place. The Chofetz Chaim, before the war, cried out and sent letters to everybody and said, Moshiach is on the verge of coming. He made a special koilo in Radin, in his city, for people to learn all the halachas, hilchas koyanim, to sit down and learn, that they should know what has to be done when the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt. He grew a nail, which according, he was a kohen, you know, and he grew a nail for Malika in case he has to use it in the service of the Beis Hamikdash. And he said, the Chofetz Chaim said, in his Pirush on the Siddur, and on letters that I know that have been published, it's not something that I'm quoting and cannot be proved. And the Chofetz Chaim said, we should demand, we should shout, Ein ben David bo, ad she'am Yisrael yitzvach shu yovoi. Mashiach will not come until Klal Yisrael will cry out, we want Mashiach. If somebody adds now, that's to my taste. Of course, unfortunately, as there is, that is a normal thing accepted in Jewish history, that as there is something good that rises up, in order for that good not to fulfill 100% its work, there has to be Le'umah, there's some opposition to it, in order otherwise it will take away your freedom of choice, your bechira. If after speaking to me, if after listening to me, everyone suddenly goes out of here believing 100% that Mashiach is coming tomorrow, then you've lost one of the fundamental essences of your position, freedom of choice. You must be left with bechira all time. And so therefore, to even up the balance, there must be somebody who will pour a bucket of cold water on all this, in order to even up the balance. And then the choice is left to you, what path you want to follow. You know who's crying out that Mashiach is coming? President Bush. When have you heard about the words of a new order? There is a man who leads the strongest country in the world today. Without a doubt today, after what's happening in the Soviet Union, the United States is the country of the world. President Bush is the leader of the world. What did he say? There's an expression, Nibo ve'ini yodea ma nibo, at the Chagoi. So he doesn't know what the Almighty puts in his mouth. But it was the Almighty put these words in his mouth. There's a new order coming. There's a new world coming. What's up with Plutzlung? What's the new world? Because he doesn't know that there is something new is happening. Something revolutionary is happening. There are things that are good and there are things that are bad. And there are simonim and there's turmoil in the world. And all this points to that derech, that one of these days, very soon, we are going to witness something very great. Now, I'm adding this only, not that I want you to accept this. Everyone is entitled, and not only entitled, should follow their rabbi, their rebbe, and their leader. But if you've asked me to speak, I want to share with you what I feel and what I learned from my rebbe. Between the First and the Second World War, there already arose a lot of people, including the Chaim, who cried out that Moshiach was coming. There's something happening in the world. It strengthened tremendously during the Second World War and during the Holocaust. And the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe came to New York. He came with a new slogan. Just imagine, to these American people who were so far removed from Torah and Yiddishkeit at that particular time. He came with a saying, L'alter l'tshuva, l'alter l'gula. Soon, repent, and as soon as you repent, Moshiach is going to come. It's going to be redemption. After a little while, he went on and said, all it needs, and he used to speak in Yiddish, is zuputzen a bisschen de Klepnach. Everything is ready. All we have to do is just polish up the buttons. Now, I'd like to find anyone here who wears buttons that have to be polished up. This is our Rebbe, whose every word was counted and gemosten. Says, does not polish up the buttons. You know who polishes up buttons? I know, because I was in the army. A soldier. A soldier has copper, silver buttons, and he has to spend once a day, sometimes once a week, polish up the buttons. And when he came out with those words, what he meant was, we didn't expect the whole world to suddenly repent. The whole of the Jewish world is suddenly going to put on film. The whole of the Jewish world is suddenly going to keep Shabbat. It would have been a wonderful thing. But if we had to wait for that, then Moshiach now would not be happening. What he said was that those who feel themselves in his army, those who follow his teaching, those who are in Sivos Hashem, those who are Tzvot Libavitch, they have to polish up their buttons. And because of their schus, when they polish up the buttons, this one will be helped, and that one will be helped, and the other one will be helped, and Morocco will be helped. God helped us. After his istalkus, this present Rebbe Zal Gesund Sein came onto the throne. And suddenly, he started polishing up buttons. He sent thousands of soldiers out throughout the world. For what? To collect money? No. To gain power? No. To put on Eden film. And since his advent, when he became a Rabbi, there's been millions of people who put on film, who don't do it regularly. People who daven, people who keep a Shabbos, women who light candles, children who learn an aleph beis, people who make a bracha. He's there. He hasn't made the world tzaddikim, the Jewish people, but he's increased the shmiras hamitzvos v'hatorah beyond belief. And this man says we don't have to polish up the buttons anymore. The buttons are already polished up. What we need to do now is in a united effort to cry out to the Almighty, the time has come for you to send Moshiach. I've spoken to Gdolei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. And they say to me, they're not quite sure if this is a correct method, if this is a correct way. And I hear from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, not maybe, not efsher, but with a definitive voice that sometimes frightens me. He doesn't hesitate. He says definitively, Jewish people, we are on the verge, Moshiach is soon coming. Who should I listen to? There's a klal and longus. Bori v'shema, bori odiv. If somebody says maybe or so on, and somebody says a definite statement, you have to take the person that is definite. I know that some say there is a danger. What happens if he does not come? Well, so many people are going to be disappointed. So many people may be turned off from Judaism and so forth. So let me tell you, those who really have faith in him, don't say no. There's no alternative. There's no maybe he won't come. There's no such thing. If he says he's going to come, he's going to come, and that's it. For those who don't believe, his saying will not help. For those who do believe, it won't make much difference one way or the other. If God Chas v'Sholom, he doesn't come tomorrow, I will still believe what the Rambam says, Ani ma'amin b'emunah shlema levias HaMashiach, v'af pi shisma mea, and even though he tarries, achaka lo b'cholim shel yovei, I still hope and pray for him. There may be a few that will utilize it in order to frighten the Jewish people, to put them off the belief of Moshiach, to frighten us and threaten us, it's dangerous, maybe this, maybe that. Those people are so in a minority. And the gamble is so great. The coming of Moshiach. That it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile taking the risk and taking the plunge. I love the Jewish people. Love them with every fiber of my being. Doesn't matter whether he sits there with a beard and she sits there with a shaitel, or one that sits without a hat and sits without a shaitel. I love them all because they are Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, and I wish I would love the greatest tzaddik amongst Jews as the Almighty loves the greatest irreligious person among Jews. I wouldn't lead you up a garden path if I didn't feel that it was correct and proper. I say to you, he tells us that all that is needed to change the world and to bring about what we all hope for and pray for is a little extra push from Klal Yisrael, not to be afraid, to cry out to Hashem Yisborach, it's enough. Ad Mosai, we want Moshiach now. It's not very much to demand of people, even with just a slight chance for such a glorious future and such a glorious event. We read in today's Shabbos and the Seder, we read Kisavai. Tosfos and Gemara Megillah tells us that the reason why we read this Seder is because it's got the Teichacha in it. And in case, God forbid, somebody deserves a little bit of punishment, so on Shalma Forins Faseno, just the reading of the Teichacha will be Yotze, and we won't have to have any punishment. Following on the Seder of Kisavai, which is the Teichacha, we find the Seder coming next Shabbos, which is the Seder of Atem Nitzovim, which according to the Rambam has in it the reference to the coming of Moshiach. V'shav Hashem Elokecha es shvuscha v'richamecha, and the Almighty will return with the Jewish people from their captivity. And Rashi says that the Almighty himself will return from captivity, because the Almighty himself is also in exile, and he's waiting for this moment for Geula to come. In other words, the Almighty Almighty is stretching out his hand to the Jewish people, and he's saying to them, I'm ready. All he demands from us is just to stretch out our hands to him, and together to bring the Geula or Hasidah. Those of us who believe, those of us who follow, those of us who are prepared to take the risk, will join in the great chorus of today. We want Moshiach now. I wanted to add and tell you. Rashi says there, V'shav Hashem Elokecha v'shvuscha. He brings the pasuk in Yeshaya Novi that Isaiah the prophet says that the gathering of the exiles is going to be a very difficult job. And the Almighty himself will come to those that don't stretch their hands out to him. But he will come and take hold of every Jewish person. V'atem teluktu achad echad. He will come and gather every Jewish person individually. Those who do believe and those who don't believe. No Jew will be left out of the thrill and the glory of the Messianic era. And therefore, I have no hesitation. This year, in which it was designated as a year in which wonders have happened, we have seen miracles. We've seen tremendous things. I just want to finish off with telling you what is the difference between a miracle or otherwise. What is a miracle? I think that the birth of a child is the greatest miracle I've ever seen in my life. Just imagine what happens. A life is born. Man and a woman come together to express their love, and out of that, a human being is born. A son that comes down from heaven. Is there a greater miracle than that? I can't imagine it. Yet, nobody will call it a miracle. Why is that? Because it happens all the time. A thing that happens continuously stops being a miracle. The same thing is if a miracle enters into nature. There's no doubt in my mind that when Iraq was shooting the Scuds and in Israel, and they landed there and they didn't do the damage that Russia wanted to do, Chas v'shalom, that was a miracle. Everybody in Israel thought it was a miracle. Everybody in the world thought it was a miracle. But then what happens is this. After a week passes and the media gets hold of it, and they start rationalizing it, and they start writing about it, and they start bringing it down into nature and into earth, it stops being a miracle. The same Jew who the Thursday before said to me it's a miracle, after he's read the paper for 3 or 4 days, doesn't acknowledge anymore that it's a miracle. That's how it goes in life. That's how the world is. There are miracles happening here now. What is happening in Russia is a miracle. But I tell you why it's a miracle. First of all, it's a miracle that all the great commentators and alle was haben geschrieben, and all the great politicians knew less than my gardener knows. And it turned out exactly the opposite as most of them wrote. Because they cannot foretell a miracle. And it's hard for a secular person to recognize a miracle. But at the same time, after a while, even those who believed at the time that it was a miracle suddenly start thinking, that's how the world is. Because this fella did this, and the other fella did that, and Gorbachev did that. If he wouldn't have gone on holiday, it wouldn't have been a miracle. So it's a natural thing. There are miracles happening the whole year. Every day there are miracles happening. But there are tremendous events and tremendous miracles that are happening today. And there's one great miracle that's going to happen. When Moshe Rabbeinu first came to the Jewish people in Egypt, they were there for 210 years under bondage and slavery. They didn't know what it meant to be free. They thought that was their lot. to be born like that. They knew, they had a tradition there. People knew that they were going to be redeemed. Because Father Jacob had told them, Joseph and his brothers had left a tradition. The Midrash even tells us they knew the sentence, the words, with what Moshe Rabbeinu was going to come to them. Yet when he came to them to redeem them, they didn't listen to him. Because the tzarras were too great. Spiritually, they weren't on a level, and they didn't listen to him. Aaron HaKohen, his brother, did, and a few scaling there, a few old people that followed around Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, they were the only ones who believed him. Then it says, after the suffering, Vayizaku, they cried unto God, Vatal Shavosem Elokim, and their cry went up to heaven, Vayeda Elokim, and the Almighty knew what he had to do. And it didn't take very long, just about 4 months, from the time that Moshe Rabbeinu began his redemption till the time when the king of Egypt, who was the leader of the world at the time, said, Etzba Elohim hi. What is happening is the finger of God. And despite him saying that and acknowledging that, he still wouldn't want to fulfill the word of God. He still did not believe and still tried to subjugate the Jewish people and didn't let them go. It didn't take more than another 8 months. 8 months of miracles, which today modern critics of the Bible will interpret as natural phenomena and events, but they were miracles. Just after another 8 months, Moshe Rabbeinu took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim, and as they marched and walked through the Red Sea, Vayaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Avdoi, they believed in God and in Moses, his servant. A fellow said to me this afternoon, do you really believe that Moshiach is going to be accepted in the world today? What, the Russians are going to accept him? He comes not only for Jews, even the Jews, not all the Jews will accept him. They'll ask him for his party card. Well, the same has happened with the Exodus of Egypt. There will be a repetition in our lifetime. And when he comes, when he is revealed, it will not take him very long. A few months, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And President Bush, his counterpart in Moscow, the Prime Minister of London, Prime Minister here, if he's still in office, stand up and say, Etzba Elohim hi. This is the finger of God. 8 months later, 6 months later, 3 months later, I don't care. Let him come. The whole of the Jewish people will realize what it means to have shouted out, we want Moshiach now, and what it means that when, please God, the Almighty will hear that cry, and he will send us Moshiach to Canaan. When the Jewish people went into the ghettos and went to the guest chambers, they will tell you that they sang, Ani Mamin, I believe. Well, in their memory and in their honor, in the honor of the Jewish glory of the past, their martyrdom, and the Jewish future, I say on behalf of myself, on behalf of you, on behalf of all Jewry, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shlema, I believe in perfect faith, Vias HaMoshiach and the coming of the Messiah. Af al pi she'yismamea, and even though he tarry, achakaloi, I will await for him and I will demand him. B'chol yom, every day, she'yoveh, that he will come, may it be fulfilled in our lifetime. Amen.